Sequel number 41 of the Church of Uganda at 150 years, celebrating our church history. The sequel is produced by Christopher Amos Chikomekontambi, and I welcome you. Tonight, in this sequel, we want to see what happened after Mwanga flees, and now in Buddu engages in a new war to overthrow the Europeans and get rid of Apollo Kaggwa. What happened next is what we are reading tonight, is what we are enjoying tonight. On the 20th of July, 1897, the Uganda Rifles forces of 20 Sudanese Nubians and a large number of ex-Anglican Christian Army military faction soldiers were led by Colonel Trevor and also others, and they fought back and they drove General Kaggwa into forces back across River Katonga. Therefore, if you thought that the battles of River Katonga are only a few years old, I'm very sorry for you. River Katonga has seen wars in this Buganda of ours. It's only that they are not documented. But here is one. The forces of Kabaka Mwanga and the forces of the British colonialists had it at this very river, River Katonga. Now, the Uganda Rifles removed the deadly Maxim cannon gun and put it to good use, killing thousands of Roman Catholic faction soldiers who Kaggwa had managed to mobilize. They escaped, and Mwanga fled to Usukuma, where the Germans locked him up as a prisoner of war at Port Mwanza on Lake Victoria. He, however, escaped and returned to Buddu. You see, they made a mistake. Because he was a king soldier, as a prisoner, they gave him so many privileges. And therefore, with those privileges, he was able to escape. He took off. Now, Kaggwa was not so lucky. He was jailed by the Germans and remained in jail by the Germans and was never released until 1914, shortly before the First World War began. However, Kaggwa is not my interest tonight. On the 9th of August, 1897, the Special Commissioner for Uganda, Sir Ernest Beckley, was in town. He called for a meeting between him and the two Katikiros, as well as Assistant Commissioner, Permanent Assistant Commissioner, George Wilson Tayari. On the agenda was to nominate the heir to the throne of Buganda. Special Commissioner Beckley proposed the appointment of Apollo Kaggwa as the next Kabaka, sending all to laughter, as that was not possible. He was advised that the throne was only for members of the princess and princess's clan, and that even then those who qualified were few. Already there was an heir apparent, and his name was Prince Chua, although he was only 1 year old. It was Beckley's turn to burst into laughter as he reminded the others that on a serious note, a new king had to be appointed and not a child. That his government was more comfortable with Apollo Kaggwa taking the throne. Tayari explained to Beckley that just like in Great Britain, the Buganda throne succession followed a genetic ancestry of almost 700 years, and that therefore Apollo Kaggwa, who was not in that bloodline, could not become the Kabaka. Sir Ernest Beckley argued that there was always an exception to the rule and wanted to find out whether the Buganda royal succession line had never ever never been broken even once. And if such a breakage was to be found, then so be it. Apollo Kaggwa would become the Kabaka of Buganda. Now they had to call an expert. The expert here was the Reverend Ernest Miller, who was helping Apollo Kaggwa with the oral research about the fallen Kabakas of Buganda. So he was called and he was asked to argue, to put the argument before Special Commissioner Bakali, how Apollo Kaggwa could not, under any circumstances, become the Kabaka of Buganda. The priest joined the meeting and he tabled a big volume of manuscript of researched papers with a chronology of the fallen Kabakas of Buganda, but Kabaka of Buganda. He explained that Kabaka Chintu was succeeded by his son Chwa the first. That the second Kabaka, Chwa, was succeeded by his son Kalemera, who died leaving a baby in Bunyoro, Prince Chimera, who became the third Sekabaka. That Chimera's son was killed, and so it was his grandson Tembo who became the fourth Sekabaka, and was also succeeded by the fifth Sekabaka Chigala, who was his son. That the sixth Sekabaka Chimba was Chigala's son, and was succeeded by the seventh Sekabaka Kaima, the son of Kiimba. That in achieving the eighth Sekabaka was the son of Kaima, and was succeeded by his son Morondo as the ninth Sekabaka. Jemba, a brother to Morondo, succeeded him as the 10th Sekabaka, while their brother Suna the first also became the 11th Sekabaka. Molondo's son Sekamanya then took the throne as the 12th Sekabaka and was succeeded by the son of Suna the first, called Chimbugwe, as the 13th Sekabaka. The 14th Sekabaka was Chimbugwe's brother Katerega, whose son Mutebi the first became the 15th Sekabaka. Mutebi's brother Juko became the 16th Sekabaka and was succeeded by his brother Kaemba as the 17th Sekabaka. The 18th Sekabaka was Tebandeke, the son of Mutebi the first, while the 19th Sekabaka Ndaula was the son of Juko. The 20th Sekabaka Kaguru was Ndaula's son, who was succeeded by the 21st Sekabaka Chikulwe, the brother of Kaguru, who was also succeeded by their brother Mawanda, the 22nd Sekabaka. The 23rd Sekabaka, Mwanga the first, was a brother of Mawanda and was succeeded by Sekabaka Chabagu as the 25th Sekabaka. The 26th Sekabaka Junju was Chabagu's son and was succeeded by his brother Sekabaka Semakokiro as the 27th one. The 28th Sekabaka Kamanya was Semakokiro's son and was also succeeded by his son Suna the second as the 29th Kabaka. The 30th Sekabaka Mutesa the first was the son of Suna the second, and his sons Mwanga the second, Chiwewa Mutebi, and Rashidi Kalema were the 31st, 32nd, and 33rd Sekabakas, respectively. Reverend Ernest Miller concluded his briefing by stating that the most distant departures were when cousins and nephews succeeded the throne. Otherwise, the majority were sons and brothers or even grandchildren. Now, Apollo Kaggwa asked the priest, who was a statistician, a statistic expert, to summarize the categories so as to make it easier for Sir Ernest Buckley to understand better. So he summarized it. So it turned out that with the exception of Chintu, there were 13 sons who took over from their fathers, while 12 took over from brothers, and 2 succeeded their grandfathers, and lastly 4 were nephews of the Kabakas. They succeeded. So Sir Ernest Buckley agreed that Buganda had no gap, that Buganda's royal line had no loophole. It was all blood, 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 blood. And he therefore gave up the idea of Apollo Kaggwa becoming the Kabaka and decided on plan B, which was creating a regency. And a regent, the Reverend Miller explained, was meant to be a person who rules a country because the king is too young, or the king is too old, or the king is ill. And the regency is for a period which is called a regency period. It was then that Stanlas Mugwanya felt that promoting Apollo Kaggwa to be the only Katikiro would create tension. Actually, to be the only regent would create tension. He explained that if a regency was to be created, somebody to rule on behalf of the Kabaka, that regency had to also be like the then Katikirship, had to be held by 2 people. So Sir Ernest Buckley then decided that the regency be made up of 3 groups: leaders Prince Nuhu Mbogo, Stanlas Mugwanya, and Apollo Kaggwa, to be joint regents. But Apollo Kaggwa objected that in Buganda, the royals never mix with commoners. Therefore, Prince Nuhu Mbogo had to be replaced, but there was no clear Muslim leader. Now, the Reverend Ernest Miller then suggested that an Arab-speaking Christian called Zakaria Kizito Kisingiri, who was a county chief, who was a perpetual deacon, who had also spent time in Zanzibar and had since become a county chief, be the one to come in as a regent together with Apollo Kaggwa and Stanlas Mugwanya. Now, Tayari pulled out a file for Buckley to prove who this Zakaria Kizito was. Yeah. And it was found that Kitaka was that Kisingiri was the son of Kitaka, a Muslim, who was a Muslim in the 1850s. That this Kizito was almost 38 years, and he was therefore much bigger than Apollo Kaggwa, who was 31 at that time. He was also bigger than Stanlas Mugwanya, who was 30. That he had been baptized a Christian at the Natete Mission in 1882, and actually he was a perpetual deacon of the Anglican Church, or the Anglican Christian Mission. So the only attachment to Muslim was his knowledge of the Arabic language. Now, as long as a leader could address the Muslim in the Arabic, he did not have to be a Muslim. Now, the Reverend Miller warned that the Muslim had acknowledged the defeat and did not deserve a slot on the regency. So their punishment for the sins committed in the 1889 war could not be forgotten in less than 10 years. And so he pleaded that they be removed from the regency consideration. Apollo Kaggwa and Stanlas Mugwanya agreed with Reverend Ernest Miller to keep the Muslims under their punishment, and therefore allow Zakaria Kizito Kisingiri, who knew their language, Arab, to become the regent. Sir Ernest Buckley then went to the next step and introduced what he called ministers. But again, Ernest Miller had to explain who a minister was, that he was the one in charge of a government ministry. There was going to be the head minister, the justice administering minister, and the treasury minister. The Reverend Ernest Miller translated the titles into Katikiro, Omulamuzi, Omuwanika, respectively. Apollo Kaggwa wondered how that could be, because the Kabaka was the main judge. He had his own cashier, and Katikkiro. So, George Wilson Tayari then explained that because a Regency will be ruling, the Kabaka being too young, they would have to take over the Kabaka's functions. And therefore, they would be the rulers, but under the British protection and guidance. So Apollo Kaggwa then asked whether that meant that the joint Katikkiroship arrangement was to come to an end. And again, Sir Ernest Buckley responded that indeed it was going to come to an end. He will be the sole Katikkiro, the other one will be Omulamuzi, the other one will be Omuwanika, but they will be joint regents, meaning that they will have same powers, that they will be the rulers of Buganda jointly as a regent in a regency. Now, Apollo Kaggwa was delighted by the new setup, unlike Stanlas Mugwanya, who saw Apollo Kaggwa being the sole Katikkiro and therefore being higher than anybody else. So Tayari explained further that even as a distinct minister, they would still be joint regents and so accountable together as a regency. But that didn't seem to get on very well with Stanlas Mugwanya. Now then Tayari handed over a list to Sir Ernest Buckley, who began to read it out, and it had the following. The capital Nkao would change the name to the more popular Mengo. The big swamp at the foot of Nkao Hill became Hill of Impala, or in Kiswahili language, Mulima ya Impala, or in Luganda, Kasozika Impala. And the entire rise to Nakasero adopted the shortened Luganda word Ka Impala. The next issue was regents, Katikkiro Apollo Kaggwa, regents, Omulamuzi Stanlas Mugwanya, regents, Omuwanika Zakaria Kizito Kisingiri, Kyadondo County Chief de Kaggo, Yakobo Musajja Alumwa, Kochi Chiefdom, Kamuswanga Edward Ndawula II, Single County Chief Mukwenda, Paulo Bakunga, Chagwe County Chief Sekibobo Mesusera Chibudde, Busiro County Chief Sebwana de Mugema Joshua Kate Wambwa, Gomba County Chief Kitunzi Yokana Mwanga, Native Army Commander Omugabe Omujasi Matayo Nsubuga, Bulemezi County Chief Kangao Samuel Mukasa, Buddu County Chief Pokino Sebauwa, Sese Islands County Chief Kweba Thomas Senfuma, Bugerere County Chief Mugerere Serwano Mazinga, Busujju County Chief Kasujju Semeo Nsubuga, Buwekula County Chief Luwekula Nuwa Jumba, Bululi County Chief Kimbugwe Anderea Chiwanuka, Buvuma Islands County Chief Mbubi Absolomu Senviri, Maokota County Chief Kaima Anderea Luwandaga, Maogola County Chief Mutesa Saulo Mayanja, Kabula County Chief Lumama Blasio Daudi, Buyaga County Chief Chambalango Stefano Kyakwambala, and the Buganga is the County Chief de Chiyimba, who was not recorded in the documents I saw at the Uganda National Archives. Now, on the 14th August 1897, masses flocked to Mengo Palace, where the Special Commissioner, Sir Ernest Buckley, addressed the Great Lukiko that the British government had accepted the nomination of Prince Daudi Chwa as the future Kabaka of Buganda, but because he was too young, 3 joint regents had been appointed: Apollo Kaggwa, Stanlas Mugwanya, and Zakaria Kizito Kisingiri. The Great Lukiko would have 20 county chiefs an extra 86 members in addition to the Regents. Here ended tonight's sequel. May the good Lord bless us all.